Well, big news with precious metal prices dropping at rates not seen in decades, with silver plunging 30% over the weekend and gold dropping sharply after months and months of higher prices. Now, analysts are linking these movements with precious metal prices to the announcement by US President Donald Trump about who he'd like to replace the head of the Federal Reserve. Now, to bring us more, we're joined now by analyst Rodda. Kyle, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you've just sent out a note saying that the movements we've just seen here on precious metals are a once-in-a-generational event. Why do you think this is, Kyle?
Just simply the numbers. Silver dropped by the most in one day in history, and gold prices dropped by the most in one day since the 1980s, and as much as in terms of an intraday range we've seen since the 1920s. So we've seen a mania gripping precious metals markets, and we've finally seen a little bubble basically burst in these commodities.
And so talk us through why you think this happened.
So we've seen, like I said, a mania building up in precious metals over the last few months in particular, and there's a number of drivers behind that. But what happened last week was that we started to see an excess of speculative positions building up in the market. And then coming towards the end of the week, the momentum of that move started to slow down. And when US President Donald Trump announced Kevin Warsh as his nominee for the US Federal Reserve, one thing that the markets have been buying precious metals for is because of attacks on Fed independence. And this was being interpreted as the Trump administration picking someone credible and someone who will protect the institution as his nominee for the Fed head. And although it wasn't responsible for the full move, it was like the pin that popped the bubble. So all of a sudden, we've had a big sell-off because people who were speculating are being basically stopped out of their positions, and it's caused this big cascade effect and a lot of this air to come out of a very speculative market.
And so far we've still seen gold dropping already today. And actually on the ASX 200 right now, we have, as you'd expect, gold stocks down quite significantly, about 10%. What are you expecting to happen today?
I think there'll be lots of choppy price action and volatility right across the markets. When you do see these speculative moves happen, and again, they become quite divorced from fundamentals, the sell-off has effect of feeding it upon itself. And there's also what we would call a deleveraging happening in other markets, where people holding positions in stocks and crypto over the weekend have to sell those assets to cover losses in their precious metals positions. So it looks as though we're going to get a lot of chop, a lot of volatility. It has to be put into context that moves that we've seen in precious metals only wipe out about a week and about 3 weeks of gains for gold and silver respectively. But it's a very volatile environment, and one would expect that it'll take a few days for the dust to settle at least.